Three different competitions, three successive draws. That is the position Selangor have found themselves in their last three matches in all competitions after they had to come from the behind for the second time in three games to score a point in their 1-1 away stalemate to dynamic Herb Cebu of the Philippines at the Rizal Memorial Stadium in their ASEAN Club Championship Group A encounter earlier this evening. And the Red Giants had William Lira to thank for the equalizer after yet another failure in defensive set play allowed dynamic Herb Cebu to take the lead early after the restart. And for Tiga Johanan, it was a case of what does Selangor need to do to win games? And sandwiched in between the two games in the ACL2 and the Shopee Cup, where they had to come from behind to salvage a draw, in between was the Piala FA Malaysia semi-final, where they held the lead thrice before squandering those leads each time to eventually lose on penalties and exit at that stage, which saw Sabah set up the Piala FA Malaysia final at the expense of Selangor. And having been eliminated from both the AFC Champions League 2 and the Piala FA Malaysia, there was nothing to lose for the Red Giants head coach Christophe Gamel as he made an almost wholesale change to his starting 11, with Noah Lyon being the only player to keep his place in the starting 11 in from that game where they lost to Sabah on penalties. And Fazli Marslan was notable in his first ever competitive start outside of domestic games as he made his first overseas tournament debut for the season, and this is probably his third full start ever since Gamel took over from Kazuhito Kinoshi in late September. And lining up alongside Fazli in defense was Jordanian international defender Muhammad Abu Abanadi and Richmond Ankara, who got the recall after being left out of the games against Bangkok United and only was involved as a substitute against Sabah. No, he was also not involved in the game against Sabah as well. My apologies. So, and then there was Raimi Shamsu, who actually came on in the semi-final against Sabah. Then in midfield, partnering line in the heart of midfield were Thai midfielder Picha Ultra, who actually also started the game against Bangkok United, but this time round it was with Mukairi Ajmal, who wore the armband for the first time this campaign, with Faisal Halim relegated to the bench following the penalty shootout heartbreak. And up front, it was a new front three with William Lira being restored back to the centre forward role the way he did against Bangkok, with Alif Iswan Yuslan and Omi Busawi completing the front trio. And with the Selangor defense looking rather brittle given the composition of the makeup of the back four, especially with Ankara and Abonadi partnering together for the first time in a while ever since Gamel shifted from the Kinoshi back five wingback system into a more conventional back four. And that weakness or that unfamiliarity among the back four saw Cebu actually attempt to break away and exploit the spaces that Selangor were leaving behind at the back. And even though Selangor started brightly with a couple of shots, It was Kalamula who actually had to produce the first saves of the match, producing a quick double save with his quick reflexes to deny Cebu a shock lead. And his saves were fundamental in providing the Merah Kuning a chance to stay level with their Filipino opponents at the break in what was otherwise quite a tepid first half. The second half, just shortly after the restart, Cebu exploited the weakness in Selangor set piece defending to break the deadlock. It was like with all the black shirts of Selangor being focused on the far end at the in defending the corner, the near post was unusually unguarded, and Kalabula was rather slow to react the as Andes as their as Cebu's number 10 Richard Andes scored off a looping header from a corner to provide the home side the lead. And this was all Selangor to blame because they still didn't look like they were ready to. They weren't fully tuned into the second half yet when they conceded the goal. And what did Selangor do? They had to respond. They tried to pile on the pressure, and they tried to push as much as possible. And William Lira only scored his second goal of the season. Yes, only his second goal. After he was faster to turn in an attempt into the back of the net with the keeper already long drawn out position. So poacher's instinct from Lira ensured that Selangor were level 7 minutes after Cebu took the lead. And just after the hour mark, Gamel decided that it was time to throw in the big guns. So in came Faisal Halim, in came Quentin Cheng, in came Chirigo Morales, their club's top scorer this season, in their attempt to try to get a second win of the competition. But it wasn't to be because as much as Selangor tried, they were denied by yet a different goalkeeping masterclass from the Cebu goalkeeper Jeridi, and Picha Ultra was very unfortunate when his Caesar's kick hit off the post, and with that, it saw Selangor uh, going away with a draw, which I think at this point, Gamel may have half decided that he already knew his strongest 11 from the players that he has entrusted. But as for the young players who were thrown into the deep end for this game, none of them literally had a standout moment. I mean, if we look at the players who were thrown in apart from your usual key players, it is pretty clear that the core players are still within those few, the same few largely that Kinoshi had previously used, even with the new tactics that that Gamel had put in place, and with the signing of a new defender in Mamadou Diarra, who was registered not just for the ACL2 but also for the domestic competition, but crucially not for the Shopee Cup. It brings a signal that Gamel could be looking at getting one or two more foreign signings to shape the squad that he wants, and using this particular period, as much as the painful exit from the Piala FA Malaysia was, it would have given Gamel some thought on how he wants the Red Giants to be shaped for the second half of this season, especially with the mid transfer window looming around the corner. And this is probably the Cebu game was a good idea to see which players could be counted upon to deliver for the second half of the campaign. And from the looks of it, I mean, the young players hadn't performed with such distinction that they would have put enough pressure on the regulars to compete harder to keep their places in the starting 11, and the usual suspects would still be around to command their places in the starting lineup. So overall, in the game where Selangor, with that stalemate, they gave Cebu their sub 2 point of the season, it became clear that a potential major rebuilding could be on the cards. And could this be the trend for the rest of the season, where knowing the players that he wanted, but at the same time having a few more scratch head puzzles to resolve? Because Sik Izan typically is Gamel's first choice, but Kalamula has maintained his performance levels whenever he was called upon under the Frenchman, when he was previously a regular under Kinoshi. Then you have your defensive backline, where Richmond Kra may or may not be around the club any longer, we do not know. But it's pretty clear that Diarra was Gamel's first signing ever since he took charge of the club, and he's likely to partner Harif Haikal. That, and with Sharul Nazim still injured, Ankra may end up staying on for the time being, but the fierce competition where Abu Nadi is also looking to have some regular playing time in view of the upcoming World Cup, that could be a very interesting puzzle ahead. Would it be a case of Diarra partnering Harif Haikal, or Abu Nadi remains to be seen. Then Noah Lyon's place is definitely he has appeared in almost every game for Selangor this season, but his usual midfield partner is Noor Al Rawabde, and that central midfield duo has always been a constant presence. But for this evening, Lion had to actually do more of the carrying work himself, considering the midfield partners that he had. While Picha Aura was rather unfortunate not to score towards the end with his hard running and with his ability to find space. The thing is, what kind of midfield does Gamel want? Would it be the case of Lion partnering Al-Ramal Abde with with a different, with two players on the wings? In this case, it could be Faisal on the left, Elvin Fortes on the right, with possibly a young midfielder who did not feature in this match, Shahir Basha. Or could it be the case of needing a midfield three, but yet without a protective tool to shield the defense? This is yet another puzzle that he has to solve. While William Lira finally broke his overseas club duck after a long time, the question is he the one who can be trusted to deliver the goods, with Chirigo still scoring as the club's top scorer for the Red Giants? And in that regard, it is pretty interesting to see whether with Chirigo almost a certainty whenever he's called upon in the starting 11, is whether your other strikers can really step up, especially with perhaps the over reliance by the Red Giants to depend on either Chirigo or Faisal to deliver the goods up front. The question mark is, if these two happen to have a goal drought, apart from Alvin Fortes, who else can really step up to score the goals? Omid Musawi was named the man of the match for this game, but to be fair, apart from his energetic presence down the right, I don't really see much of the impact or the threat in which he caused to the Cebu defense. So there's the jury is still out where Omid Musawi is concerned. And overall, in the larger scheme of things, we do expect December to be the month where we could continue to see Gamel make tactical tweaks, personnel adjustments as he seek to try to engineer a revival of Selangor into the second half of the season with a rather poor first half of the season in this year coming to a close soon. So, but with that tepid performance, Selangor still sits second in Group A, but it allows other clubs in their group to have a fighting chance to reach the knockout stage, with Tampines currently leading the group after a dramatic 3-2 win over BG Patum. But last year's finalists, Goa Hanoi, Buriram, and BG Patum, not far behind, Selangor do have quite a fight on their hands, especially with their remaining fixtures at home to Kongan Hanoi on the 28th of January and the second home game to BG Patum on the 4th of February. So, two home games for Selangor to try to salvage something to keep their involvement in the Shopee Cup alive, but otherwise, it will be interesting to see what Gamel continues to do as he attempts to reshape the squad without much success so far ever since he took over in September. Or could the Selangor Executive Committee somehow run out of patience and decide that they may need a third coach of the season to help to boost their chances of finishing strong in Liga Super Malaysia? I think that's where the jury is still out where this is concerned. Some of the players are more than capable of holding their own, but not all, but the others, they have yet to fully convince that they deserve to be contenders for the starting 11. But their performances have also shown that while on paper they are unbeaten at this moment, but three successive draws and tournament elimination doesn't bode that well for Gamel. And only continued involvement in the Shopee Cup with these two games next year, that could define the tenure for the Frenchman as the head coach of Selangor before Dr. Johan Hamidon and the executive committee decide to be swayed by yet thinking of yet another head coach to take over the Red Giants in what has been overall still a disappointing and unsatisfactory campaign thus far.